my definition of I've defined, or I've looked into that all of our functions are based off of our subsenses, not our senses, so we're going to be going over that. And then we're also going to be looking at reviewing the newborn movement assessment, because Luciana does not have it. So I'm just going to show the assessment part, but what I'm going to be doing with all of you, because the rest of you have it, really start going in explaining more that when you have a child and that you've evaluated, okay, now we have issues, how we're going to start moving that right into a movement lesson and work on the child for that whole hour with more explanation there. So, and we will have a couple of other munchkins coming in, and I have one young man coming in who's 10, who's had open heart surgery several times too. He has, I think it's the exact same diagnosis as Jimmy Kimmel's. You know, he had this whole week, but Max, on the cover of my newborn assessment, he has right tricuspid atresia. I think Jimmy Kimmel's son has the left side, but I don't know then if he even specified which side is the issues having the atresia. So it means that the heart's malformed, and slowly as a child grows, they have to go in and literally build the heart.
Because normally it should close by during delivery, basically.
No. The atresia means no. There's no valve.
Oh, there's no valve at all.
Yeah, Max was missing a third of his heart. His was a right valve, but because he had the hole in the heart, his was like a basketball hoop. So the blood would hit the back of the heart and drop down without needing the valve. So he was able to bypass having, I think it's called a fundant, during the first couple of weeks. So Max made it to 6 months without his first surgery. Whereas Jackson, who came in, I think he had his within the first 2 weeks of life. He had, I think, another surgery when he was 3, and then he had another surgery when he was 8, but it failed. And they had to pop him back open a week later. So, and I've been working with him, and so we'll be discussing what's neat about with him. She's like, as long as he doesn't have to get naked, because, you know, like, not many, no offense, 10-year-olds want to sit here in front of, you know, a crowd. But I said, no, I'm not going to strip him down. But what I'm concerned with, because he's starting to pull forward, is not only the scar tissue, but he has a wire around the sternum. And I think he's growing beyond the wire, sort of very similar to a tree, you know, when they have the ring of the tree and the tree grows around that structure. But he's been doing really well with me. Literally, like after his 2 heart surgeries that he had, I think they were in June, and by September, I think he was bowling. I mean, so Jackson's really cool with it, and he's cool about it, you know. But it must be a weird feeling as a child, not knowing what day the doctor's going to visit and say, you know, time to go in. So, because you get an enlarged heart with the overwork. When we discussed the senses, I was reading a great book that he recommended, a short, sweet thing, The Element by Sir Ken Robinson. And it was funny because Diane said, Diane, my vision person, who you all know, said, why are you reading this? You are in your element. I'm like, well, it's a delightful book. He had effects of polio and was put into special ed until someone, some kind of, I say congressman, but parliament or some kind of representative in your country came in and said, why are you here? Because there was nothing wrong with his brain. And he's like, hello, you know, because when you're disabled and you're put into the schools. But anyway, the schools changed in England due to him, and I think that's part of the reasons why he's knighted. He really didn't have hard feelings about it, and he's been, you know, more of a proponent of he's just differently abled. Just because you're British, are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Okay. People, you know, I mean, I hate to be like, you know, naive to think, oh, you're from England, so you should know everybody, but, you know, I get it that, like, maybe Paul McCartney and Branson, but other than that, it's not that you have to. So, one of the lines in the books, he said that, you know, most people only think we have 5 senses, but we have more, and I just rattled off, you know, balance, counterbalance, and all of that. And I started researching it, and really for the subsenses that I present with, they're only really looked at for animals, not for human beings. But just because you taste something doesn't mean it helps you swallow. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean it helps you digest food. Just because I see you doesn't mean I can interact with you. I mean, I don't understand. So I refer to the 5 senses as topical. And one of the things I'm really trying to teach you guys is how to get away from those 5 senses. Don't trust your eyes. You know, trust more the hand and the touch. And this is where, thanks to Magna's husband, didn't think to make these things a circle, but as you know from last class, and Luciana, I'll be filling you in here and there, so if there's gaps, I'm still looking into working with the iris and the buoyancy. So just imagine that this is the part of your eye, which it's neat that it's a rainbow, because science has only said this has to do with the color of your eyes, is where these filaments are important to. But I just posted up the video again today on the Facebook site. But any movement that should happen, the eyes reflect in that. And I'm still looking at is there a way of looking, let's say, at a 3-month-old baby or a 5-month-old baby, and see if this conversation, the buoyancy's not there. Because I also believe, if you look at the way that the iris is on the cornea, if you look at eye anatomy, as we know, as the iris comes out, I still believe that this 8 proves all my theories, but you can see as he moves, very similar to what's going on with that slinky. Now it's a bit better on my Mac, which I didn't bring today. I can bring it in, but if you look closely enough at this video, you will see that for every action there's an equal opposite reaction. However, what I'm trying to teach you is the human body has a properties or laws of not only physics but buoyancy. I'll certainly pass the slinkies around. I've got lots of slinkies, but are you familiar with like sickle cell and so forth, where the cells are deflated? I know it's a concept too that the deflated cells are looked at with ABR, but I think what happens with low-tone, high-tone kiddos, people that have had strokes and so forth, is that the buoyancy is not there. So the filaments sort of get deflated. So when you go to sit up, this buoyancy is there for the eyes to come in. And when the eyes are deflated in a sense, where it's more like a saucer, you're counteracting, you're canceling out the movement, and it's much more difficult. So I would be very interested to somehow, if we could do a study also too, like with autism and stuff, maybe there's less filaments, and I mean maybe there's a calculative or mathematical, but basically what I'm after, if there's a way, like CP is diagnosed now more and more in the U.S. to like age 2, that we can look at just where the doctor can go into the eyes quickly and say, okay, we have an issue here. And again, give them more scientific backing that, okay, I get it that I don't have a diagnosis, but there's buoyancy issues. Because like I've been teaching you with the bowl of water and stuff, when we rise, this is also why the skeletal bones, I don't believe, are connected. And they're porous inside. Because again, that naturally rises when we come up. So when we start having osteoporosis and so forth, now what happens is the webbing with inside the bone starts to deplete and creates different air pockets. So by having larger air pockets in here and there, does it affect the buoyancy of that person, where they're coming up to sitting, where they're coming up to rising and walking, to look at these interactions of the buoyancies. We're going to be covering balance and counterbalance. I'm almost to the point where I don't even know if we balance anymore. Getting back to the slinky, no matter what I do, and you saw that eye, that the human body is making these mathematical calculations constantly. My phone in a sense, is balance. It's an object. There's no movement within it. And even if I move this table, my phone's not going to be reacting to those movements. So I think that's more the definition of balance. But is it more here, not so much balance, but more of a counteraction? Because as I presented last time, we don't use muscles to make the movement. The muscles respond to the movement. Yes, there are adult functions. An adult can purposely use a muscle to create, especially an abnormal movement or a counteraction or counter response. But a child is not. And I actually, depending on Nella's temperament, I plan on putting her on the table at 10 o'clock just to really show you that again with the baby and how the baby responds. But I'm going to work around. You know, since she's here all day, her sleep patterns and if she's up to it, and because babies don't come with clocks. The next thing to look into, again, where I have another paper that we're going to go over, is just in gravity in general. Having special needs or any kind of special circumstances in our system where we succumb to gravity. This phone, this slinky will always succumb to gravity. But gravity is not a big force. I mean, I can pick this sucker up. I can pick my phone off. You know, I get it that you're a little, quote, heavier, but the force of gravity is not what we think it is. This has been the bane of my existence. I think this is where gravity comes from. So what I'm after here, and this is where I need a physicist, it is driving me nuts where they're not walking down the street, and I thought I had a lead for somebody. Oh, they're killing me. It's actually on, like, because even when I look up the physics of this suckers, what I love where they said the outer shell is not important, like, whoa. So I spin it and it's going to stay spinning. It's not perpetual motion. I have to spin around it. So if you look at the Earth's core, because what I'm doing here more and more is I'm trying to look at physical physics and put it into human physics. So if you look at the Earth's core, you have different layers, right? So, but each of those layers, which we're talking with Bruce, but it is correct. I mean, they've already discovered it, but I like to work out stuff first. It gets hard to Google me because I don't know what to say. My words are different. So each core goes in opposite directions. I believe it's those two opposing forces that create a binding energy or binding force. So yes, it is out there for the gravitational binding force, but they look at just the outside of the Earth. Well, it's because this is not truly a gyroscope. If I have a gyroscope, and I'm going to be playing with a gyroscope, I have a really nice one, a quite expensive one. But if I have a gyroscope, we're dealing with a center axis and percussion. So does everyone know what that means? So there's a center action as they spin it around. So if I spin a bucket of water around, you know, that's centrifugal force, and that's what a gyroscope works off of, is that centrifugal force in a way. So our bicycle wheel is considered a gyroscope. So, and once a bicycle gets going, it stabilizes our system, or it stabilizes. A bicycle that the wheels aren't going, you know, Einstein said that is the most the bicycle is the most unstable yet stable object out there, because if it's going, then it's up, and if it's not, it's not. That's sort of like the human body. The reason I'm after the Earth's core, so I get it that for every action there's an equal opposite reaction. If you take that further of a sphere rotating within a sphere, that'll actually bring in and create a bind. And you'll feel it with. The reason I think this is interesting, if I go to reach for something, okay, if I go to reach for something, the bones are going to go one way, my muscles are going to go another way, my veins, my nerves, my epidermis, and this is where I think the myofascial tissue really comes into play, is the slide between the two that creates a binding force. So if I spin around, in a sense, as you know, and they refer to it as inertia, which is, I believe, incorrect, because the inertia is the outside force. But if I spin around, I come in. my arms don't fall off. And now if I spin around with Nella will cling to me. However, if I spin around and I'm drunk, on drugs, special needs, then yes, I will fall away from myself. The binding force is not there. And the same thing too, if I go to spin around with someone that has special needs, let's say, that doesn't, they will fall away from me. Because like one of the characteristics, if you have a special needs baby, like that's the one thing I will go back to Graham before he got sick. And because I remember someone yelling at me, or maybe it was after he's sick, I don't know. This is where, as you know, once you have a kid, you think you remember all this stuff, like as if. But I would keep my child here, and then slowly I was like this. And she was like, you know, I still remember Sylvia's like, get him up here so he can see the place, he can see the, I'm like, that's where I started. But they, you know what I mean? So was there an issue with Graham's binding force? But again, you know, I didn't have me when I was there. So if I do this, so first of all, I have to move in a certain way for this sucker to go. So I might not be able to talk and do it at the same time. There we go. As this gets stronger, the force of my hand, my muscles start to attract to this, right? So this is what I want to show you passing around. You can hear it. Now they're saying again, this outer shell means nothing. Well, what the heck? What about my hand attached to the outer shell? I have to rotate in a certain way. So if I tighten this rotation, and now you'll see all the contractions of my muscles. Now I don't believe that my brain said, make tighter, make tighter. This is a perfect example that my muscles are reacting to the movement, not creating the movement. But maybe it's hand in hand because I still have to rotate in a certain way to create this. So when I don't move properly, or I don't have rotation, force stops. Because it's not, again, where the two attractions of the force. Does that make sense to everybody? What?
To initiate the movement?
Right. It has a string that goes in there, but I left my string at home. So see, you put that in there and then you go, whoop. Like starting on an old lawnmower.
Yeah, how did you initiate when you were showing?
On the floor.
Oh.
But it's a gyroscope.
If you want to play with it, you're more than welcome. Or if you want to play with it at break, whichever, or if you don't want to play with it. So if we touch with rotation, or if we touch with these principles, this again should be starting to show you that when you work, that the system will want to attract to you. Like, I'm not going to get that with this slinky because it's plastic. It's an inanimate object. So one of our senses is with rotation. We have a sense of how to rotate and how not to rotate, and when that sense of rotation is off, our system is off to respond to any sort of stimulus. But again, this is where you have to go back. When I say this, we're good. This is where Nella's really going to come in handy, that we have our little poster baby. You have no idea. Up until Thursday, I'm freaking out going, why don't I have babies? What? And then I'm like,
This one.
I'm bringing, it totally like Nella's coming. We're going to have like show and tell. Yes, Nella's coming. At 5 months old, you really shouldn't know your name that well. So you are becoming a super baby, which is good. Oh.
Got it? Can't move it fast, it's slower.
Especially how we rehabilitate people's shoulders.
Can you feel that force though?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where, like, you know, people that are really good at it, that's where they get that athletes, that runners high and stuff, that they need to feel that level of power within their system. But I don't think that this, it's also harder too as you sit down. When you stand up and you have more rotation versus, you know. But again, all of these things are good examples for you to learn how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I'm like wanting to do that.
Well, that's how I was doing it, just around.
So it's
Yeah.
not a flat rotation. It's a,
No. A flat rotation is more of an ellipse. That's the whole thing that I'm trying to really show you guys. Human beings are the only ones that, not human beings, but living organisms function within the opposition to gravity. So in other words, I can do it this way as well as this way. But if I was dealing with this slinky, if I pick it up, he's losing his circle.
right.
Do you know what I mean? Because of the succumbing to gravity. There's no way I'm going to be able to hold this in such a way that in any position, I have this, or I can show you. However, with me, yes, I should be able to tie shoes up here as I should be able to tie shoes here. Now it gets more difficult again going around our back because of the way that our brain is mapped up using our topical senses way too dominantly, which is our eyes, and so on. But that's why if I do a cartwheel, that's why I think, you're really going to, more so Luciana, she loves to play with herself. So you should be able to do it up here. But I think this would be even more difficult because we're so used to hand functions, because if I'm stirring a pot, the pot's going to be below me. But now stand up and do it. Yeah, now see her, the way she likes it. Now let's let her roll down the hallway and do this. No, not right now. We will. I'll challenge you, don't worry, but yeah.
Notice it's going a lot faster.
Right. But now try it from up above. I'm just saying, this is something you can play with, or it's here. Now, no, upside. See? You're still keeping it down, but try it this way.
Upside down. The other way.
But see how that's a different function for your nervous system. But do you feel that binding force for those of you who played with it?
So you mean binding is like attracting each other?
Right. Just like the electrons in the protons.
Yeah, and it's within the little gyro thingy, but also between you and this.
Right. But that's where I believe that this is the origin of gravity. Today, science does not know where gravity comes from. I believe that the Earth's core, but I believe the Earth's core going in two opposite directions, they call that a magnetism. They've said, because one is iron and it's that it's a fluid, but if you keep going, the oceans rotate, the wind rotates, all of these kind of things. When I flush a toilet, you've got southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. The Earth has such complexities of rotation that I believe that's where gravity comes from. And then if we rotate properly, then we interact with gravity within this sphere. If you look at the sun and the Earth, they rotate. But if you look at the moon, that's centrifugal force. There's no rotation, so that's a rock. There's no living organisms. So if these kind of principles are looked at, I believe too that right now they're looking at 9 galaxies to see if they will make planets. But if they use these principles, they'll know which stars are going to go. Which stars supernova explode. The rotation's not there. So when the rotation's not there, and you see it more with a rocket, when the rocket takes off, if the rocket doesn't rotate properly, that's when Newton's law kicked in. For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. Rocket explodes. So it's the same thing with the human body. Yeah. But I can't believe nobody does the physics for this. They're saying it's a gyroscope. It's not a gyroscope. There's no access point. I get it that there's an access point within the ball, but the way magnet is moving around the ball, it changed. Look at her. She's like, Mom, you're holding out. This Sophie stinks.
Wow, it only wants to go out, away from, you want to...
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say is, yes, it wants to just...
It just wants to go.
Right.
Away from my head.
But I think this is why we don't fly away off the Earth. Look at her.
Look what you feel now.
It's like...
See going on.
But can you appreciate more that our kids don't feel this sense? They didn't go into cartwheels. I think this is why you're still exploring rolling down the hallway, or why he's still exploring, the high jump and the pole vaults and the volleyball. It's those unexplained reactions, but what I'm really trying to show you is how to touch movement. And when you know how to touch movement, you can create movement. Does that make more sense? You know, if I'm here with spasticity or with low tone, this interaction, this feeling is not going to happen. But I can't flush a toilet with low tone to show you how that's not going to counter-rotate or rotate within the laws of the movements of the earth. Because those principles are always constant, but in us they're not.
Just saying, no, the toilet flushes backwards in the equator.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying I can't make low tone water.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And this is more and more where I believe too. I don't believe if this is also correct. I don't think the electrons and the protons then are on a true elliptical orbit.
Yes.
Where it circles. That's where I believe it. Like we were talking about last time, the hula hoop. No, it's not a true. What they? Right. I
Yeah,
believe it's
it's
an
off
elliptical orbit, not the orbital orbit. What is it? The round orbit. Anyway, they believe atoms work like this, that it's a circle and it's around, right? But what I believe is it's an elliptical orbit, but like the hula hoop. Because again, when that speeds up, what happens to a gyroscope? It gets stable. But when I boil water, it starts looking like a bunch of hula hoops working around. But again, they can't see an atom that small. But also what's interesting about this, I can't do it this way. This is the way the Earth looks in space with our magnetic field. So is this done so as it moves? Because the Earth doesn't move on a smooth orbit. It actually kind of goes around like this and then within a spiral. I loaded up that video. Again, I'm not here to give you a whole science class. I'm just, because I'm going to butcher it because I'm not a physicist. But this is the way I believe too the Earth goes through space. Sorry, what?
I'm going to throw something else in here.
Okay.
For probably a minute to 2 minutes, I could feel the energy going on and on in my body.
Right.
Even down into my little pinky at different times.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that in.
No, but is there a way, and this is what I'm looking at too, I've devised it in here and I showed you the TheraBands, but is there a way to create, especially for anti-aging, an exercise program, like I said, and present it with that you are working with this binding force? Because what happens to us when we age, we kind of stop binding and everything starts falling off. And even though, again, I'm 52, I get it that I have issues and I still, I have weight to lose and stuff, but I can roll around like a ball, you know what I mean? Like, I have this, I can work within it, but most people, when they start aging, the rotation drops, but this binding force. And I think that this would be a much better way of actually presenting the importance of the myofascia tissue as well as what's going on with all of that, because this makes your muscle stronger. Do you know what I mean? When the myofascia is doing this. And if the myofascia has been interrupted, traumatized, deficient, collagen, all of these kind of your nerve systems, your neuropathy, when you start affecting those parts of the system mechanics, you lose that organization of the mind. So that's where we're going to play with this too, but I don't want anyone to kill themselves because I don't know how good my liability is. But I'm going to put this on Luciana. But this is a ballet turn board. So. Another sense we have, which is pretty self-explanatory, we have, or hopefully most of us have, we have a sense of temperature. Again, humans are probably the frailest creatures out there. We can really, body temperature-wise, can only handle, a 5-degree variance. Without that, we're severely incapacitated in the hospital. Even right now, if I were to move to Alaska, I would need clothing. I would need, to protect my outer shell as well as my inner shell. But it does not take long for us to have a hypothermic reaction. Even if I have a fever of a degree, it's wiping me out. I notice how it affects my system very quickly. And so when we have a lot of our kids like Graham and stuff can't regulate these temperatures, as well as you and I would. And again, is this a sense, a subsense, especially kids that are born premature, have a real hard time with the regulating of temperature.
Can
And
I say something?
yep,
That is, I'm realizing that of what I'm gonna say now, but since I started to move with rotation, I noticed that I can manage a broader range of temperature. I can adapt to that, and so I get ill less. So, for example, if I go somewhere and I took a plane and it was the air conditioning was very low, then I'll get to the place ill or with throat pain. And now I know I feel that I can adapt better to the changes of temperature. But I didn't relate that to this. Now I'm thinking it has to do with what you're saying.
no, but everything too with this that I'm telling you, it's not out there. It's the hardest thing for me even writing my papers because I can't, to reference, but I don't think, like I said, I've really been trying to calculate how to pull from all of this, but we, even like you said with the temperature and stuff, knock wood, other than food poisoning that just took me out a couple of weeks ago, I never get sick. I've been here, I'm around people all day long, even people that come to me very rarely, because their exposure. Some of the ones that I've been talking about, like Donna's mother that I see who's 92, I get it that I don't expect her to be able to handle this gyroscope or whatever. But since we've really had a regulated care where I see her once a week, knock wood, she hasn't been in the hospital. She hasn't been where Cezanine, who I've been seeing for years, has not been in the hospital. I realized we had an issue with a cupcake and all, but she was outright exposed, so to a pretty hardcore virus. But other than that, she's really healthy and doesn't require that kind of medical. Gran, has not been in the hospital. I can't imagine forever. So I really think a lot of these do help with the system mechanics. And again, is it the binding force, or does it have to happen more as an orchestra? However, one of the last things we cover is like spatial orientation. So people go, well, what's the most important? Is it balance and counterbalance? And I'm like, well, if I'm driving a car, spatial orientation sort of is taking up a top line. So I think our system, especially as we mature out, can play with each one's, where it doesn't have to be a constant. But right now, Nella has not mastered balance, much less her spatial orientation. So she's doing it more so like this, where her system's working very synonymous versus us, where we can pick and choose. So another one is a sense of pain. And that's another thing. My son has been in pain for so long, it really took him to about age 9-ish to actually tell me like his head hurts or his stomach hurts. Because to him that was normal. He had a sinus infection for 3 years, gag reflux up the wazoo, acid reflux, all of these things that IVIG now as he gets, and again, I don't know if he's more sensitive, but he's just more aware. But within, because he has to be IV'd every week for his autoimmune failure, because he cannot be exposed to bacteria without his medicine, but it's a blood-based medicine. Within 24 hours, he has a pretty decent headache now, where he just, I need to take some drugs, don't bother me, I'm going to go lay down. So, just turn her into a physicist so she can solve all this. Well, with that as any say. So, but our sense of pain for some is very tolerable, and other people, like I had both my babies natural, no problem, no drugs. If I had to have my babies out of my head, I would have just been like, I need 5 epidurals. Like even just to go to a hairdresser, I remember way back when with frosting, I would just drop dead. Our proprioceptive or kinesthetic sense, our sense of self, going back to Vitruvian man. With this work, I really find a much higher sense of, not to say head and shoulders, knees and toes for the kiddos, but that sense of being able to do things with their body, their inner sense of movement, coming over their system, knowing how to look for something where they're not just flopping over. Same thing with adults and stuff, where they're walking and what you're feeling here. And then also then again our spatial orientation. So throughout the week I'm going to be covering all of these.